former students and alumni, and I think that's such a cool opportunity to do. This one specifically, though, we want to put a few graduates in front of you for a couple of reasons. One, to show you that it is actually possible, that we actually have animals that have made it through the branding process and have survived and are doing well in that way. So we've got those creatures. We've created some PhDs, and here they are. And so we're excited about that. But also they've got some insight to the process, that some lessons learned that I know that you can learn from and grow from as well. And so I'm really excited to have. I'm going to introduce who we have sharing, and then I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their journey and some lessons learned, and then we'll just open it up for Q&A. We've asked Lisa Howard to join us and to share a little bit. We've asked John Kelley to join us and share. Thank you for both of you for being here. I've also asked Lisa Christensen, who just recently finished, to be a part of this time as well. And so we're excited about that. And then Derek Brown also we've asked to share. So let's just go ladies first. We'll go Lisa, then let's go Lisa Howard, Lisa Christensen, then John and Derek in that order, just so you guys know, just to have some order there. Just start off and introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about your research, and then also just a brief overview of some lessons learned that you have from your experience. So Lisa, take it away.
Hi, I'm actually a youth pastor in a small to medium town in the middle of Missouri, our state capital, Jefferson City. Almost everybody in the entire city works for the state, unless you're working for someone who works for the state, that type of a thing. I did my research in parental involvement factors that promote adolescent faith formation, and it was fun, mostly. And I enjoyed talking to the families that we finally found that were willing to talk to me and share what they actually do at home. That was one of the huge problems that we encountered that was very much unexpected, because the families didn't want to really share intimately whether or not they were living a Christian life at home, which was kind of the point of my whole research. Since then, I've got a youth group of about 140. They don't all show up every time, and obviously we haven't actually met for over 2 months now, and there's been a huge challenge to keep them connected and engaged, and I won't say that I've done really well with that. We've worked hard, but yeah, that we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out with all this stay-at-home stuff. Anyway, I have since getting my PhD, I have started an outreach it's right now just to our church and anybody else who I guess wants to join, just talking with our parents and creating parent support and helping parents, because of the huge influence, and they're the foundation of our young people and the continuation of our church, our nation, and the cause of Christ. And those parents at the middle school and teen years often step back and often actually step away from trying to lead their kids. And that's the very worst time to do that. It's a very crucial time in their lives, the middle school years, and then transitioning from high school into college. And if the parents step away from leading their family spiritually, then a lot can happen. And that's so I've really been pouring into parents over the last year. And just since the shutdown, Sarah Andrews has been very forceful to push me in this area, gotten an online presence and reaching out to parents and teenagers that way, which was not my forte, and it was very hard, but Sarah was very forceful and very adamant about pushing me to that, so that was fun. Some things that I've recognized, I don't know where I'm sure everybody's in different aspects of the journey, when I ended and I had to send my reports to Alicia, I told her the journey was like a roller coaster. And I'll say from the front, I don't like roller coasters because I don't like those kind of surprises. But the journey was like a roller coaster. It had the huge expectations and anticipations. We're doing this. It's so exciting. And then you hit the hill and the whole bottom drops out and you feel like you want to barf. And that's how I felt my journey was, probably because God was doing a lot in my life, changed my whole direction of ministry, changed my whole direction of life through this journey. And it's a good thing. At the time, at various moments, I didn't think it was a good thing. And there were times I wanted to scream at Alicia. There were definitely times I wanted to scream at Dr. Beard. I'm telling you, there were times I cried. And just realize you're going to have those emotions. There's a reason not very many people have a PhD. And listen to the professors. That's what I can say. One of the biggest things I can tell you is listen to them. They really do know what they're talking about. And they didn't get into this for the money. And they're here because they love you and they want to see you succeed. And I had to learn that. It was easy because Alicia was easy to love, but it was something where I had to learn. They really did know more than I knew. And the biggest thing from the beginning is to recognize how much time this is really going to take. Space your life out. You cannot give up your family for a PhD. Nothing is worth your family. And take the time that you need for you. At the same time, recognize if you really want this, it's going to be time consuming. To be honest, I didn't find very many of the assignments difficult as far as, if it was algebra 5 million, calculus, physics, whatever, that would have been difficult. It was writing, it was research, it was reading books and gleaning knowledge from them. That aspect wasn't difficult. It was the amount of time it took to stay focused and not quit. And that's huge to me. That was huge to me. Another couple of things, make friends with your cohort. By nature, I am a quiet person until I get to know someone well. And it was hard for me at first to make friends with someone that I just saw on a screen or just saw a name in our, writings every week. Force yourself to reach out to a couple of them. You need them to vent to safely. You need friends who understand the process, who understand what you're going through together. Be willing to learn something you didn't want to learn. Be willing to read some books that you're like, why are we reading this? Just be willing. You'll never know what God's going to do in you and through you because of what the program is asking you to do. And you will discover a compassion for people unlike you. And I think that was huge for me. Coming from a religious background different from Johnson, I think that helped me because I knew coming into this that I didn't understand the Restoration movement. And I didn't understand all of this. And I knew from the get-go I was going to have to learn from people different from me. And I tell you, it was an amazing, amazing journey to do that. Some little tidbits, no APA like your skin. I mean, no APA better than your face in the mirror. It will, I'm serious, it will save you a lot of heartbreak. RefWorks or something similar saved my life. Use it, keep it up to date. Keep an ongoing reference list. I don't remember for sure which professor told me this, or actually it might have been Dr. Estep, it might have been Dr. Salyers. I don't really know who did it. One of them sent me the actual paper, reference list, not their references, but like the Word document that they use to keep track of all their references, page numbers, quotes, what topic it was about. I tweaked it to my own likes so you can search it, and they rewrote the quote in their own words to make sure they didn't paraphrase. That was scary to me. So I actually, in my document, kept actual quotes on actual page numbers from magazines, articles, research papers, whatever. It ended up, ended up with two, because Word couldn't keep it longer. It just wouldn't load. My first one ended up being over 300 pages long. The second one was like 200 pages long. I'm telling you, you got everything in one document, and you code it as you use it. You want something on fathers, and you've coded for fathers. You do a search on fathers, and bam, there is all of your quotes on fathers, and you've got your citation right next to it. Right. It made life so much easier. Let's see, what else? The last really important one that I think was whatever software you choose in your analysis when you finally get down to doing your research, know your software before you start inputting your data. Practice with it, know how you want to use it, understand how you want to pull stuff from that software so that you don't start over 4 times like I did. That's the most important things I can think of. I got tons of stuff I could say, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. Those to me are the crunch moments of getting through this journey. And I have to say, if you're married, if you fall on them, make sure they're in this with you, because it's important that your spouse is behind you and pushing you in this. I would not have made it without my husband.
Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Excellent work. Lisa, number 2, would you introduce yourself and take the floor?
Yeah, I'm Lisa Christensen. And first, let me just say, I can attest to everything Lisa Howard is saying. Everything. Definitely so. Keep all of that in your memory, because every bit of that will help you. So I live in Missouri as well. I'm in the Kansas City area. And my dissertation was basically on trauma and looking at how rituals, specifically Christian rituals, worship, those kinds of things, but rituals in general, and how we can either engage God or we can go through the ritual in more of a socialized manner, and just really to see how engaging God in the ritual, how that can lead to post-traumatic growth after trauma. Interesting in the days that we're in with everything going on right now. And so my research really was on leaders and how they handle their own trauma, what they do with that liminal journey that you go through once you've been traumatized, and what are they doing with their trauma? Or do they have support? Do they not? Are they, when they come in that place, are they pushing back and withholding and drawing back from relationship with the Lord and others? Or are they really able to push in and get beyond going through the motions of it? And then how can they help others that are in the same place and stuff? And so this has all helped me, because a lot of my work here is that I work in different areas with leaders with trauma situations. As we know, trauma can range from large to small things on a regular basis. I work with the Trauma Healing Institute through the Sending Project here in KC here, that we facilitate healing groups, Christian healing groups across KC. Also, I do lay counseling here. And then I work with IHOP-U, the university here, where I do go in and do counseling there. And then I work with like the elementary schools, especially ones that are in low poverty, a lot of high poverty rates, a lot of trauma, a lot of just situations like that. And so it's been very interesting. I also teach mainly research and leadership. I've done some Bible classes and some human development classes, but for the last 5 years, I've taught research. And so all that kind of just blends into me continuing to learn and to hopefully grow for myself, because as a leader, we can't take others anywhere that we are not willing to go, and we're not willing to push through and find a safe place, you know, for us to continue to heal and grow and all of that. And so interestingly, beyond teaching, the real, I'd say where God has really taken it is that I have different arenas that leaders have popped up to say, hey, can you help me walk through these transitioning places that I'm in? Because, you know, when there's transition that's happening, there's conflict that's happening, and trauma rises up, and old pains and old hurts and all that rise up. And so, so it's been fun to do that. It's helping me to learn and grow myself, but also helping them to really first inwardly, what do I do? How do I work and dig deeper roots? I call it digging deeper wells with the Lord, of being real and honest with our offenses, our expectations, and what we need to grieve out of the expectations we thought was going to be, and it isn't happening. And then offenses not only with people, but also with the Lord, and forgiving, healing and growing in that, and then changing their conversation and how they approach others, where they gain empathy and compassion and all of that. And so it's a good work. It's tough at times. I have to stay on my, I want to say stay on my toes, but stay in the presence of the Lord to keep dealing with my own, as well as having that capacity to have empathy and be able to stand in the tension usually between the groups and stuff. But I love it. It's very fulfilling and all of that. And so let me just say, with the PhD, again, I agree with everything Lisa Howard has said. It was excellent. I'll say for me, one of the challenges that is wanting to do it as fast as you can. It is a hurry up and get it done. Skim through it quickly. And I can remember Dr. Crumpton, when we first started, almost every question, and maybe you get this every cohort, Dr. Beard, you'll find this out maybe, that the very first question everybody wants to ask is, what's the earliest I can get done? What is the earliest that I can graduate? And with that, like Lisa said, you have to live life with it, and you have to figure it out. You can't put everything on hold. You will have burnout very quickly. It is a marathon. I've been told that many times. It's a marathon. It isn't, what's the opposite, where you, as fast as you can. I'm not a runner, you can tell. So recognize that and realize that it's going to take time, build life in it, enjoy it. And it's really more about the journey than it is the end goal. And I will say that then it took me to the next challenge of, what am I going to do with this? What is it going to get me? And that was a huge challenge for me. I'll say for two reasons. One, Dr. Crumpton, you'll know this again too, is I had no desire to take a doctoral program. It was not even on my radar. I'd gotten my master's. I was fine. I was good. And then someone presented it to me. Hey, maybe you should consider this. And I was like, nah. And then my husband said, what do you think about this? And I said, nah, the Lord would have to hit me over the head with a 2x4. Yeah, you don't say that. And so I had no peace until I finally accepted it. But I had no vision for it. If I'm going to be real, I had no vision for it. I had no passion for it. I'm an educator. I love education. I love learning. But I had just come out of my master's in May, and here I was signed up to start in August for my PhD. And I was hitting burnout. I was tired. I wanted to enjoy life. And so, and not having a vision for it, it was a huge struggle. And then I thought, what am I going to do with this? Once I really realized, once I got into it, that it was research that I knew nothing about. And I kept looking at, well, what's the end goal? What's the end goal? And so many people around me would ask, what is the end goal? What are you going to get with it? What are you going to do with it? And all I could say is, I don't know. And I would say, I'm here because the Lord told me. And people would say, you just want that PhD? You just want those initials? You want this and title? And no, you don't understand. I don't care about any of that. I'm just trying to follow the Lord. And so it was a huge journey for me with the Lord, to step back and realize that it was about the journey, and to trust that God has a reason for it, even when you can't see it. It's that Abraham calling that it seems that Mike and I've had along the way, my husband and I, that he put me into, of just step out and do as I say with this. And so I guess a tip in that is see and recognize and experience the God moments in it. Because that is a journey. We aren't just here to learn and to fill our mind and to fill our head and to get all this knowledge. We're here to be transformed. We're here for God to transform us into not only his likeness, but also to call us up and equip us into where he is calling us to. And I'll say, as a tip in that, trust that journey. Another challenge that I had was feeling the need, like I said, the classes, like Lisa said, I did fine with. When I got to the research, it drove me crazy. And I felt this need to have to prove myself, prove that I was there. And that isn't real. That's a facade, because the reality is that we aren't there. That's why we're in the program. We are there to travel, to get there, to learn, to become there, and to recognize that the instructors and your leaders are actually walking alongside you. They are not at the end goal, at the end saying, come on, we're here when you get here, but they're actually with you in that. And so just recognizing those kinds of things. Let me find my notes here back again real quick. The successes I found, again, was trusting the process, not attempting to take shortcuts, I'd be stressed. I'd go to bed at night and I think, Lord, give me some way, a shortcut out of this. Get me out of this. Are we not all that way? When we are in pain, we're like, just get me out of the desert. But no, he wants you to find him in the desert. He wants you to find him in that wilderness, in that place. And so don't try to find the shortcuts. It really won't work. And you're missing out on something with the Lord in that. I'll say, have fun. And you may not have fun in the research and the writing, but there are moments that it's fun, and allow yourself to appreciate what you've learned. But as well, I used to tell my husband, he'd say, I'll do all this stuff. Just go back and work some more. And I'm like, you don't understand. I've been working 6 hours straight already. I can't. No, it's okay. I want to give you time. No, you don't understand. Let's go do something fun. Let's have outrageous fun. I need that. And so it's spending that quality time with your family. It is just doing outrageous things. You'd be shocked at some of the stupid things that Mike and I did. We'd go impulsively go out for half-price appetizers at almost midnight. And then we'd be driving back home, and all of a sudden we're just like teenagers. We're in our 50s. We're like teenagers, 1 o'clock in the morning, out driving around, and we see police going in. We're like, should we chase the police to see where they're going? That was our fun. And we would just laugh and be stupid, but it would rejuvenate you, and it would just give you more passion and more excitement. And then let me just say that the last thing, when it came time, because you do so much reading and writing and processing, and you're so deep into it, I struggled with then the time with the Lord and reading my Bible and the spiritual. And I really had to reorient, because to me it became another task. And okay, I have to do this and that. And the reality is that was the very thing I was looking to see. Is that what people do when they get in these tough places? Do they push back from relationship and they rely on just the routine, the ritual of something? And so I had to reorient my thinking of, no, coming to the Lord is a cup of cold water. It is a breath of fresh air. It is my place of peace and comfort, and it is my place of rejuvenation to water and refresh my soul. And so when I gave myself grace that if I couldn't read, I couldn't this or that, I could just sit in the presence of the Lord, and I could trust that he would meet me there. If that was just listening to a worship song, if it was pouring out my anger and frustration, if it was crying, if it was praising, and sometimes I'm not a great singer, nor am I a great dancer, but sometimes it was just dancing. And it would do something to my spirit and my soul, and it would put me in a place of having capacity and stuff. So those are my takes on it, but you will get through it. It's always been not if, but when, and that has saved me over and over. So.
Thank you, Lisa. One of the things I learned when I became director, by the way, is whenever students ask the question, how quickly can I finish this? Their file automatically goes into a different category. We automatically add 6 months to the process as retaliation for that question. So might just keep that in mind moving forward.
So is that why I ended up going a whole nother year?
Yeah, you asked it more than once, apparently. So. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Being a program director, Chris, you don't pull back the curtain and reveal the wizard.
Oh, I know. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That's true. All right, John Kelley, please. The floor is yours.
Right. Yeah, I have to go behind the two Lisas. This is a tough act to follow. Lisa, you mentioned that statement, not if, when, and I can. When you said that, I can hear Dr. Crumpton. That's what she kept just relaying to me. You know, because I'll talk more about Dr. Crumpton because she was absolutely just my lifeline throughout this whole process. Because there were several times that, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it and wanted to hang up everything. But those conversations that you are going to have an opportunity to have with the instructors are just going to be paramount. But a little about myself. I have 20 plus years in corporate America, mostly in management and leadership. I've probably have been in every department except HR, so sales, technology, marketing, you name it, I've done it, operations. The dissertation that I ended up with wasn't what the study wasn't what I started with. Matter of fact, it didn't change until I had a conversation with Dr. Crumpton. You may remember this when you came to Atlanta, and that originally, because for the last 10 plus years, I've been in the healthcare field. And I wanted to do something at that point in time with healthcare and looking at the equality, the equity of healthcare across the system. And it's very needed and very a study that could have been very successful in terms of how they've done it. But Dr. Crumpton asked me when we met, this is something that you're going to have to kind of live with for quite a while until you're done. Is this something that you're passionate about? You know, why did you get into it? Why did you get into this program? What was your driving force behind it? And I thought more about that question, which kept me up for a couple of nights. And this is, I don't know, this is probably what, year 2. So I had kind of started down this path. I was writing papers along this topic, but that conversation drove me to say, no, that's not really what I wanted to do. Now, if I'm thinking strictly about my career, makes a lot of sense. But it wasn't what I was really passionate about. And as I mentioned, 20 plus years in the management and leadership world, I always struggle with the fact that how do I get to that next level? How do I make it to the next level? Why do I see so many other people climbing a ladder and I am sometimes in this stagnant position? And that has always dogged me in terms of trying to figure that out. So ultimately, I ended up studying the basically exploration of Black male managers' perception of the availability of leadership and advancement opportunities in Fortune 1000 businesses. And, you know, so again, I've kind of lived that. You know, I had my assumption or presumption about this study prior to taking on it. And so one of the things I struggle with, and Alicia and the other committee members, certainly Dr. Waddle, certainly had to make sure that I stayed in a lane where, John, is that what you're thinking, or is that what the literature and the study, you know, is this, you know, how are you making sure that you are bracketing, you know, all these presumptions that you have and making sure they don't bleed over into the study? Now, and when you go through this whole process, you're going to realize that even if you take a more of a real objective perspective in terms of your study, subjectivity is always going to be in it. So you're always going to have some level of interpretation. But I needed to understand that. I needed to always be aware of what I was bringing to the table in terms of my experiences and my knowledge. And so when I did the study, what was interesting to me as I interviewed 10 other males, African-American males that was in leadership roles, I did have this presumption that it was going to be a lot of information that came out of this about discrimination and racism and just a plethora of other things that was in line with that. And there was certainly that. So there was certainly experiences that probably the majority of the participants had, but it wasn't what led the study, because it was almost, it happened, but it's not something I dwelled on. It was something that I looked at as a challenge to overcome. I didn't allow it to define me. I recognized that it was an experience that I had, and I used that, and I being the participants, used that to springboard themselves to other areas of their career. And so these are guys that were VPs and senior directors and, you know, owned their own companies at some point. And it was just, it was actually very, it was for me, even though I'm in that role, to hear other people's experience, it was interesting because they had just so many different experiences that I didn't have, but their courage and the resiliency and the way they were able to go about this achieving leadership was the reason why I did the study. I want to understand it. I wanted other people to understand this phenomenon, that there is this group of people that are going through life and trying to achieve certain goals that doesn't get a lot of attention, because when I went and I started studying, there was very, very little material on this topic, very little material. And so, which made my job even harder, because now I had to, you know, really try to figure out how I'm going to take this literature and review and kind of, you know, interpret it and bring out certain scenarios that not necessarily driving, you know, it from my perspective, but letting the literature drive it. So again, I had to be very, my research, I guess I'm saying, was much more difficult because it wasn't just a lot of it out there. But ultimately, I guess in terms of the research, I was just overly thrilled with the feedback that I got from my respondents, and I'm hoping that the end result, the dissertation, is something that people can look at, and even if they don't draw upon it to do further research, can pull from it some additional knowledge that perhaps they didn't have, and say, wow, I did not know that this was something that these individuals, these people would go through, these young men would go through. I just wasn't aware of that, and I shared it with my dissertation with individuals, and that's what I got, is that, wow, this is I was just taken back with some of the comments. But in terms of the program itself, I'll tell you that I heard that it's a challenge. The program, it is not a challenge. It is far worse than a challenge. It really is. It's far worse than a challenge. It is. CrossFit is a challenge. Trying to break a 7-minute mile is a challenge. This is insanity wrapped into some kind of collaboration and so forth. And and being very, very just transparent and forthcoming. But that being the case, when you see yourself on the other side, it is a joy. It is an experience that you can share with your family. But so few other people have had that experience that you had, and I had the opportunity to share graduation day with John and Alicia up in Knoxville. Brought my family there, and it was just a wonderful time, wonderful experience back in, was it December, right? Yeah, back in December. I think Lisa Howard, you spoke about the collaboration with your cohort. Absolutely. I still speak to Cece and some of the other individuals on LinkedIn, and it's hopefully it's a lifetime friendship that you develop, that you guys can continue to support one another. But as you go through the program, you're going to realize that some of you are stronger in other areas than others, and you guys just will be able to bounce ideas and just kind of support one another. When I first started, one of the biggest challenges I had, and I'm going to use that word challenge, was the material, the so much material to read and sift through and do so much. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and so I want to read every word because I can't. I'm afraid I'm gonna miss something. I got to read every word. And I had a conversation with Dr. Crumpton, and she said, John, you remember that book that you guys had at the very beginning? And I don't know if I have it right here. I don't know. Can you guys see this book here? I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if you guys read that book, but I didn't read it because it's how to read a book. I don't need a book to tell me how to read a book. I've been reading books all my life. But so when we had a conversation, I realized, let me go back and read that book, because obviously there's some good tidbits in that book. And my nights didn't become better, and my weekends didn't become shorter until I read that book and understood how to read, academically. When I got that and I realized those steps and those little tidbits and those little ways that you can read 400 pages and it doesn't take you 2 weeks. And I did that. It made my life so much better. And that book right there, it absolutely saved me. APA, you got to know it. You got to become very familiar with it. I have this other book, and I just wanted to bring this book because I think this book, I'm going to show you, I think Alicia and other guys, they had this book and they said, let's just see what's going to happen. Let's just see how they struggle with this book. Absolutely the toughest book I've ever read in my life. This book here. I don't know if you guys, this book here is, I keep it on my book, and perhaps it ward away snakes and flies and everything else, because it is absolutely a death trap in terms of trying to understand it. But I would just say it was an enjoyable time. You got to have family support. Hopefully things happen in your life during this period of time that don't pull you away from it. I was lucky enough, blessed enough not to have issues with jobs and family. Healthy family, job stayed pretty consistent. So nothing really came into my life that pulled me away from my studies. I had Alicia met my wife. She was amazing, supportive, she allowed me to tell her on Friday night that Saturday night we're going to go out dancing and for a meal. And on Sunday night, I said, well, I don't think we're going to make Saturday night. She allowed me to have that conversation with her week in and week in and week in without complaining, without struggling. But as she noted to Alicia at graduation, I'll get mine now. It's time for it. And of course, in every single way. So financially, okay, what you want? Yes, I guess I can do that. So But I would tell you guys, find joy where you can. When you have those breaks in between those courses. I mean, try to enjoy it. But when you can, definitely throw yourself into it. It's worth it. You're going to get a lot out of it. The word tables, I think someone talked about those word tables in terms of, throughout the process, keep a track of your references, different quotes, pages. Go ahead and put them in a category where we talked about it, where you can easily get to it by just doing a query. When you're in your writing stage, it becomes so easy to say, okay, I knew I read something once about, discrimination in the workplace as it relates to Title VII, where's that? And I was able to just do a cross-reference on my word table, and wow, here it is. And then I, paraphrase. It just makes it so much easier than trying to go back and read these articles to try to determine where that quote was, where that passage was. So if you do the right things in the very beginning, it makes it easy on the back end. It's almost like mathematics, if you will. It's very difficult to get to, trigonometry or get to some of these higher end mathematic courses if you don't understand that basic addition and subtraction. And it's the same way as that if you do everything and you follow these steps at the very beginning, really to the T, your back end is going to be so much easier for you. I think that's where I'm going to end. I know you guys are going to have questions, but I'll end with that. Oh, and I'll say this, and Alicia, this is you'll find this interesting, is that after graduating, I struggle with this idea of, I don't know if you call it being an imposter or something, like, man, this is what do I mean, a PhD, I mean, what does it mean now, and does it mean that can I post on Facebook and misspell a word? I mean, am I going to be dragged to the mud? You're going to have that. You're going to get through it. And even if you have plans to do something with that knowledge and that study, you may struggle with that. I will say one of the things that came out of my study that started happening prior to actually graduation is that I teamed up with a couple of guys and we took really the bones of what my study was, and we are in the throes of creating a tech company called Quick Pitch. We're developing an app right now. It's an app. It's a social media professional networking app that ultimately, as you remember, I talked about those having skills, but not being able to find those leadership opportunities. Well, that's what this app is all about, is providing exposure and opportunities for everyone. It is not single focus. It's for everyone, and allowing people to be able to let people see who you are, to be able to present yourself in a way that a resume or some other medium would not be able to present yourself. And so that's what I'm working on now. And I took a lot of that, the information that I pulled from the study and help build this app that we're building on right now. So that's all I have to share right now.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing, John. And that's what I love about having graduates come on and talk about this stuff, because they tell it like it is, just like John did. Tell it like it is. And I love that. So thank you again. Derek, I believe it's your turn, my friend.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Derek Brown. I currently serve as the Vice President for Graduate Studies at Berkeley College, where I also serve as Professor of Practical Theology, and also at the undergraduate level, I chair the Pastoral Ministry Department. I started my PhD program a month before my twin girls were born, and they now are going to turn 8 in a few months. So I remember sitting in the hospital, completing some assignments, listening to the girls sleep, wondering why I have such great life planning skills. And it all worked out. My dissertation, to follow the pattern step by step, my dissertation was a historical case study on Quaker ecclesiology. That led to a book, and right now I'm working on my second book through Brill, which is a theological ethnography of Quaker pastoral theology. I just wanted to offer really kind of quick snapshot tips, not to belabor any one point, especially I don't want to take away from the question and answer, but really they fall under 4 categories, from least important in my mind to most important: productivity, writing, family, mental health. So if you will indulge me. Productivity, the enemy of being productive is being busy. And we often mistake busyness for being productive. And the reason you will burn out is that you will get to an end of the day and you will feel distinctly unsatisfied. And the reason you'll do that is because you will have been working on your PhD, but instead of actually doing what Cal Newport in his book Deep Work calls, that deep sort of work, maybe that's writing or research, maybe you have stayed on the margins. I have a colleague who is struggling with his PhD. For one of his sections, I think he has 40 pages of footnotes, but not a word of writing. That's that busyness versus productivity. There's a reason that some days you can feel like you can leave the work and move on, is because you've done that deep work. 2 books I would recommend: Deep Work by Newport and Flow by Csikszentmihalyi, who is out of University of Chicago. And both say this is to reach a point where you are lost in the work. Another book I recommend is Daily Rituals, I believe. And this gentleman started a blog where he just looked historically at the daily rituals of geniuses and artists. It's not that helpful because until 1950, most geniuses and artists used amphetamines, alcohol, and neglect of their families to do their work. However, what you do find is this, that most of them will tell you that they found their rhythm when they worked best and they stuck to it. Cal would disagree in that he would argue that productivity can be trained. You do not always have the luxury of, if your best productive time is from 5 to 8 in the evening, but you have a family, you don't always have the luxury of working during that time. You have to train yourself to be productive in the time you have. Studies have backed that up. A study of piano prodigies, of teenage piano prodigies showed that the difference between a mediocre prodigy and a true prodigy was that a true prodigy stopped practicing after a certain point because there were diminishing returns. I think the temptation is to try to shove the 12-hour day in, and I used to do that quite a bit. But I think if you're really honest with yourself, after about 8 or 9, hours, that work at the final 3, you're just sort of staring at the wall. So, that second book is Flow by Csikszentmihalyi. Not going to spell it. I'm doing you a favor by pronouncing it for you. Csikszentmihalyi, C-Z-I, and several other letters. And so Flow would be his most famous book. My second thing is about writing. Writing is the most important thing you can do. It is the first thing to go when you get busy. I don't know why, but it's one of those truisms that seems to be true. Whenever times get tight or you get busy, your time to write is the first thing that gets shoved out of the way. You really have to guard that time. You have to block it out and learn to say no, as if it were, in my case, as if it were a course. Just like I wouldn't schedule anything if I were teaching a course, I cannot schedule anything during that time. And so I am blessed that I have 2 teaching assistants, and most of their job is to tell me to stay off my phone and to write during my writing time and to keep people away from me, or just to save me from myself and my lack of productivity. Jumpstart your writing if you need to. I found that with my colleagues at work that a lot of them took time away to start their dissertation. I did that. I took a couple weeks, rented a flat down in Belize to begin my dissertation. I found that that could be helpful. I also found that Maya Angelou, what she did until almost up to the day that she stopped writing till she passed, was that she found a hotel room, and that's where she would go. Find a spot where you write. I realized that there's a coffee shop I would go to, and that's where I did most of my writing. I actually have a drink named after me. That's how frequently I went there. Jess hates that. She thinks that's the height of vanity. So she's a much better Quaker than me. So guard your writing time. Always write. Have everyone read your writing. The difference between a mature scholar and a new beginning scholar is that a new beginning scholar is afraid to let anyone look at their work. And that's that imposter syndrome. They're afraid that if someone actually looks at their first draft, they're going to realize I faked my way into this program, or they're going to laugh. A mature scholar will want everyone to look at it because they want that feedback. And that takes time. I didn't want anyone to look at my writing for the longest time until I realized when you have more and more people look at your writing, you get more and more perspectives. You can toss a lot of those comments out, but not only do you get feedback, you get buy-in. People who are supporting you, who want to help you, and perhaps even can connect you to people who can help you. So ask for help. Having a book project, a dissertation, and asking for help on that is a great way to begin those long-term mentoring and professional relationships that'll help you down the road. Family. Recognize that a PhD reflects a different age. I was asked 2 years ago to give a lecture to a group about what it means to be a father and to write a PhD or to be a scholar. And this group met and talked about historical Christian intellectuals. And I said no. And the reason I said no was because we can learn nothing from fatherhood and scholarship from the past, because if I was a scholar from 1950 back, how I would do it was ignore my kids. And if I was a scholar, that meant I had the luxury of being a scholar, which meant I had servants making my meals. The fireplace, dark wood, leather-bound book study was a reflection of the privilege I had. The PhD, whether we like it or not, is systemically geared towards that, of you dedicating yourself into that quote unquote study and writing. You can't. You have family and friends, and you want to invest in them. They talked about having your spouse support you. That can look differently. My wife has never read a word I've written. She doesn't care in the best way possible. She loved me before I was a scholar. She'll love me after I've been fired. She just doesn't care. What she does care about is that I'm okay, and I'm loved, and I'm supported. She has been a saint, and I don't know what she has done to deserve having suffered through this, but she has been great. In terms of family and friends, you are not a capable judge of your presence or absence with your family or friends. Meaning you cannot judge and say to yourself, oh, I've been around my kids enough. I've spent enough time with my wife or my friends. You do not have objectivity there. So if your spouse or your loved one or your kids tell you that, you're not around, you need to listen to them. But that's on the flip side as well. You will have times where you will think to yourself, I've missed my children's, some key points of I've neglected my spouse. But if they tell you, no, you have been there, trust them. Trust them. And friends, don't talk about your work. Don't talk about your research when you're talking about your friends. We get tunnel vision sometimes. And I think we all know the one person, if they're doing their doctoral work, who, hey, did you see the game last night? Yes, that reminds me about this or that. Like everything goes back to their dissertation, to the point of we're just not going to talk to them anymore. So make sure you protect your friendships by not inviting them into what I love was just said, not inviting them into your insanity. Let it be your insanity. And you can collaborate in your cohort. And finally, mental health. Have hobbies. Jess told me midway through that she said, it seems like your only hobby is self-loathing. So she forced me to have a hobby. And so midway through, I started learning French and guitar. Find something to take your mind off of it. And finally, and I think most importantly, is embrace the paradox of doctoral work. I discovered the paradox when I taught homiletics or preaching to my students. The paradox is this: when you preach, you are handling the word of God. You are proclaiming the gospel of Christ, in whom all things are made, the power to transform lives and eternities, to change the universe. And no one will probably remember it within a week. That's the paradox, right? It is both very serious and also ultimately meaningless. And that should make you both humble, but it also should help you not to be lazy. That's the paradox of doctoral work, is you are doing something very significant, but ultimately it's sort of silly. You're writing this dissertation that you and your mother will read. You need to hold that intention. Because if you don't, you'll either think it's so silly that your self-esteem will plummet, or you'll be so significant that you'll just be insufferable. And your expectations will be so high that when you don't get the plaudits or accolades you deserve, you'll just be crushed. Recognize that the paradox is this: you are building the brick, and by itself, the brick has no significance, except that in the great scheme of things, a future scholar will build upon that brick. And when you go out far enough, that brick turns into that house of knowledge, that body of knowledge. And even though we live in an age of Christian anti-intellectualism, for most of Christian history, it was recognized that there was sacred work in Christian scholarship, that in each of these bricks of Christian scholars working little by little, they were helping build the kingdom of God. I mean, even the rabbis recognized that an hour of study was equal to an hour of prayer. So take it very seriously. Don't take yourself very seriously, if that makes sense. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Derek. Very much appreciated the words you've shared there. And sometime I'd like to find out how you actually got your mother to read your dissertation, if that actually took place, because
oh, of course not. Of course.
Well, at this time, I just want to open up the floor to any questions that current students might have, or anyone at this point, frankly, but specifically current students. Is there any insight you'd like to gain from these survivors? The floor is open.
What are some tips you might have about picking a good committee for your dissertation?
I would say, first off, pray and pick one person, maybe the chair, who actually knows something about your topic or your general area, and then pick some of the professors that you worked with, that you know, that you really, really respect, that have worked with you, that you have a good relationship with, that you know you can talk to them and they can talk back and you understand what they're saying. And then you might even pick one that that it's hard for you to understand what they're saying, that you know will push you to a greater height. I don't know if that helps any.
I was going to say, I agree with that as well. And for me, I found that, well, let me just say, first of all, one of the greatest things that I learned from Dr. Crumpton, which I never even shared with her, never thought to share with her until recently, towards the end here with my own teaching is really, really working to pull out the best, the excellent in people.
Mhm.
And I found that to me, that is the greatest value that I gained in some of this, and it's carried within me. It's transformed me to see, not only see, but really have the heart and the passion to pull that out of them. Now, you get a lot of pushback, as Dr. C knows. And at points, I've been the same way too, that I've given that pushback in my lack of understanding. But that has been my greatest asset as an instructor and as a person and as a leader, to see that in people and to pull that out of them. So with that, then I'll say several years ago was the first time at the retreat down in Tennessee, I met Dr. Beard in person. He was my chairperson. And the joke with him being right there, being aware of it, was that he was one of the toughest, meanest ones there. And we all joked, and he was there with it. And he kind of played up to it. But there was something in my spirit that thought, now don't take this wrong, but I thought, there's something genuine and there is a caring, if all I can explain, and please don't take this wrong, like a teddy bear caring there of that. And I thought, that's what I want. I want someone that I can see has that passion, that heart to care that much. And I knew, I was like, Lisa, what are you putting yourself in for? Because it was the joke right there. I'm tough, I'm mean, I'm going to do, and they're going to, you know. But that was, and I thought I embraced that from the very beginning, to say, I want to be excellent in what I'm doing. I want to learn how to embrace that. And I want to appreciate it and be grateful for it. And sure, there were times I didn't always agree, and I would use my voice to disagree, but I was able to maintain a place of gratitude and try to be respectful in that way, and be able to still submit to that authority and leadership, knowing that their heart was for me. And so therefore, even when because I hit one spot right at the very end, that they were trying to get me to see a completely different way, that I could not comprehend it, because I was used to this paradigm, and they were trying to shift me to include a larger paradigm. And it was a struggle, but I struggled with myself, I struggled with them, but I struggled with the Lord, but I knew there was something in it. And I think that's what you really want to look for as well, is really looking for those who are going to see that in you and pull that out, and then go through that struggle with gratitude, appreciation, and humility and respect and all of that, to know it might be a little bit rough, but it's going to be good.
Yeah, if I can add something to that, I would add, pick a committee that is encouraging, and not that any individual committee would not be, but we all are encouraged in different ways. And you have to figure out, know yourself and know what encourages you in terms of that drive. And I think it's very important, because when you go through this process, you're going to have to pivot many times. You're going to get back some deliverable that you presented that you thought was, wow, I did a wonderful job. Look at myself. I've really outdone myself with this. And you get it back, and you feel like you're back in the second grade, because it's all read up and marked, like, what's going on? What is this? And you have to, that when you get something back that has been kind of picked apart, that person who gives it back to you, that is that committee member who gives it back to you with encouragement, gives it back to you with some type of go for it that doesn't demoralize you, but actually, picks you up, you're going to need that, because you are going to get things back, and it's going to be different than what you expected. So you need that to keep your spirits up, because I think all of us can attest that we've done work that we thought was really just exceptional, and when we got it back, we realized that it was far less than exceptional, probably on the other end of the spectrum.
Other questions?
When you're looking to do your research and analyze your findings, there is a whole host of different software packages out there that you can use. How did you choose which program for analyzing?
I did mine by hand. I don't recommend this.
I looked at the cost and ease of use. I'm not a technical guru, but my husband is an IT specialist. Actually, is a supervisor of IT something. Anyway, and so I knew he could help me if I ran into problems. But basically, play the cost versus what you're going to get out of it and what you need it for. Like if you're doing straight quantitative, you're not going to need the overpowering one for qualitative. If you're doing a mixed methods, you're going to need one that's going to be able to do both. At the same time, you don't want to go into debt for an analysis software. That was one of the big things I looked at, was the cost versus what I'm going to get out of it.
And for me, it was ease of use. I didn't want to, my time was already being spent, having to do other things. And so I didn't want to have to take a week's time trying to learn how to use the software. So I look for, and it certainly cost and was a factor, but I sought something that wouldn't require this huge lift to learn and be able to operate.
Do you guys mind listing in the chat which ones you used?
Yes, I can do that. Mm-hmm.
Could you also mention in the chat what type of a study you did, whether it was quantitative, qualitative, phenomenology, whatever?
Other questions?
This is David. I have a question about the workload and time investment that you all put in, and kind of how it might evolve from year 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 or past that. So you mentioned that it's not so much that it's harder necessarily. Some of you kind of disagreed with that a little bit, but that it's maybe more time intensive. So I'm kind of curious, just in terms of forecasting my kind of time budget, what to expect.
That's hard. I know when we begin this program, we were told to expect it to take about 20 hours a week. Some weeks it took that, some weeks it took less than that, some weeks it took more than that. I think when I got to my electives, I was at this point so excited that I quit paying attention to how much time it took. Now recognize I didn't have children in the house, and that was huge. Those of you with children still in the house, you have to juggle that. I was working 40 to 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, which then that didn't leave me much other time. However, by the time I got to the end, to the last half of the electives and in the actual dissertation process, my pastor told me, Lisa, I'm so excited for you doing this. that take any time you need. I'm not going to cut your pay if you need to take a day off, if you need to go travel to do interviews. And he was very gracious about that. I still had to prepare all of the same stuff. So he basically, I still had to put in all the hours I had to put in to get ready, but he let me juggle the days and the times other than set service times. So to answer that, I would take the weekend was like, I don't do anything else on weekends. From Friday after work, except for Sunday church, that was study and writing only. And sometimes because I'm a night owl, after my husband went to bed, I might stay up 2 or 3 more hours. Was I tired all the time? Duh, yeah. But that's what worked for me. I think you have to find what works for you. As Derek was saying, you have to find what works for you or somebody. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Sorry about that. But as far as hours, I'm a very quick reader. So I could read faster than many of the other people in my cohort, and they got mad at me. But sorry, that's just, it was easy for me to do that part. The writing took me a long time. Actually, probably not as long as some other people in my cohort, but I did things quickly. And so that, I don't know if that helps you, but there were many weeks I didn't put in 5 or 10 hours. There were other weeks I might've put in 30.
Yeah, I'm probably not a great example because in my line of work, they didn't care. So I was able to work during quote unquote work hours. And they also reduced my workload to complete it. And so some people have that, and some people don't. I think the danger probably occurs more during the dissertation phase because the coursework, by nature of its deadlines, forces a rhythm upon you. And once you get through the first and second course, you learn those rhythms and it gets easier and easier. Once you're on your own, then life has a way of creeping in. And so that's where that self-discipline kicks in. So you'll learn quickly how much time it'll take. And then you have to start really thinking ahead, how am I going to create my own self-motivation? Because I think that's where, if studies are correct, right, that you lose a lot of PhDers is in that dissertation phase.
Yeah, I will absolutely agree with Derek. When an assignment the deadline was 12 o'clock, midnight, I knew it was a deadline. I was preparing for the deadline. You know, that was no problem. When there was no deadline and I could make a decision, do I watch this last football game or do I do some research? And if Alabama was playing, then the research waiting. So, but if I had, an assignment that had a timeline or a deadline on it, then I would absolutely do that. But in terms of just pure time, I think it depends on a multitude of things. What the actual projects you had going on that week, or what the assignment were that week, how much reading it was. So it definitely varies. And I can say that there was times that I spent, all weekend doing some things, and there was times that I spent, maybe a couple hours on Saturdays and Sundays, and not much time at all.
Yeah, let me add to that too. I think what they've mentioned is really is sort of consistent until you get through the elective phase. That really is kind of you have something at the end. The difference is with the elective phase is it's not quite as intensive week to week, but you can't put off. You have a major paper due at the end of that 7 weeks, so you have to do the work throughout. Mm-hmm. Where it does shift quite a bit is that research proposal and dissertation phase. And I've shared this with students before, but I'll share it again now. When I was going through the program, I had 2 choices. I had the choice to hound my committee and tell them that they were slow and stay on top of them and trying to get them to hurry up with my review and risk ticking off the very people who held my fate in their hands. Or I could say, hey, until I get feedback from my committee, I have nothing to do. And I can enjoy this time and actually rest and rejuvenate and do something I need to do, take care of a honeydew list or or watch the football game or whatever the case may be. And so my encouragement to you is that one of the struggles, I don't think I've ever met a student that wasn't frustrated by the process of research proposal and dissertation. It's a nature of the beast. You're working with other people who have crazy schedules as it is. And, when I was a student, I was like, why can't I get this stuff back in 2 weeks? What's the holdup? I'm waiting on this, I want to get done. And now that I'm on the other side, what I realize is that if you send us an 80-page research proposal, I can't sit down and review that 10 pages per day over the period of 8 days. I have to sit down and review all 80 pages at one time. And depending on how well that is written and APA is on it and everything else, it's going to take me several hours. And then if you add that dissertation, if it's 150 to 200 pages, it's even more so. So unfortunately, what happens is that, I've got other duties that I have to fulfill now and with deadlines, and I've got to find that time to sit down for 8 hours and review your work. And so I say that to kind of give you a little picture of what that looks like from our perspective. But in the end, what you have to remember is that you just take a deep breath and enjoy those times when you don't have anything else to do. You'll work like crazy. It'll be when you have the reviews back to you, and when you've defended your research proposal, there's going to be a time where it is just like a lot of stuff going on, and you always will have something to do. But once you hit send to that committee, take that break and take advantage of that time to recuperate.
So thanks for that information. I have a question. So with the dissertation, are you submitting information in sections? Or are you submitting it all at once for review?
So so basically your research proposal is the first 3 chapters of the dissertation.
Right. But so let's just say we're past the research proposal. Now we're submitting for the dissertation.
You will not submit until you have chapters 4 and 5, and you'll submit the entire package.
Okay.
So you'll do your research, you'll do your analysis, you'll present your data in chapter 4, you'll present your analysis in chapter 5, and the entire document is submitted.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Could I say one quick thing?
Sure.
Not to be self-indulgent, but I will for a second. I think one thing that those who are in quote unquote traditional PhD programs will say to those who are in distance programs, besides the traditional snobbery, is they'll say, oh, how do you have the close relationship with your professors, with your chairs, etc.? And I would concede the point that it is up to you to really maintain and work at learning and journeying with your professors and your advisors as much as possible, because there's a lot to learn. I started the program when I was just a lowly first-year professor, and I'll be honest, I could not be where I am now as vice president if I had not learned from Alicia. I find my statements in my writings as I'm reviewing master's assignments, I'm using the same terminology she uses, but also more importantly, trying to embody that same care behind the so what's. Because without that care, the so what's have no meaning. And so my regret is that I didn't work harder to keep contact and to learn more. And I would encourage you, technology, as the pandemic has made connection that much easier. It doesn't take much. They will find the time. Try to journey with your advisors and professors as much as possible and learn all you can. That'll really round out the experience. And so I just want to say I very much appreciate Dr. Crumpton, all you've done.
Well, I think that is a perfect note to conclude this session. And I do want to thank the alumni who joined us today. Thank you for your perspective, Derek, John, And the Lisas, thank you for your input, for your hard work, and very excited to see where you continue to go from here. So thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and we'll have some more PhD alumni talking about more PhD stuff coming up here. Sounds like we're taking a commercial break. Coming up here, and then right after this break. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thanks, everyone.